welcome to the deep dive. You shared this fascinating piece about TATANKA's new take on creep, and we thought it would be really interesting to unpack what's going on here, not just musically, but culturally.
Yeah, it's quite something.
We've got TATANKA's blog post announcing this reimagining, and honestly, it's a really rich piece of material to dive into.
Definitely.
So to get us started, what exactly is this musical event we're exploring today?
Well, today we're looking at TATANKA's AI-assisted reimagining of Radiohead's classic Creep, but it's way more than just a cover.
Right.
TATANKA calls it a fundamental reinvention. So our goal is, to understand how AI fits into the creative process here and how this new version sort of speaks to where things are at, specifically thinking about America in 2025.
Okay, let's unpack this then. When you say reinvention, we're not talking about a band just like putting their own style on a classic in the studio, are we?
No, not at all.
The blog post really emphasizes that this is part of TATANKA's bigger adaptations project. What's the thinking behind that?
So the human editor's note on the blog gives us some good clues. It compares it to Anna Volkova's bonus tracks, where the whole point was using existing songs as a launch pad, basically, to create totally new pieces. TATANKA was apparently really inspired by that idea, taking their own musical touchstones and fundamentally changing them. And this AI Creep is the first thing they've released from this adaptations idea.
And it sounds like a pretty radical transformation. 14 minutes long. That's, wow.
Yeah.
The blog describes it as a modular but cohesive piece of 8 separate *𝗧𝗔𝗧𝗔𝗡𝗞𝗔 reborn. That's a huge leap from the original song. What does that actually mean, musically?
Well, TATANKA's version has this big linguistic shift. The lyrics are mostly in French, with just bits of English scattered in.
French? Interesting.
Yeah. And musically, the core is built around grand piano and different kinds of strings. But then, interestingly, they use multiple male lead singers plus female backup vocals. And they mention, sometimes there's a rhythm section in guitar. So it's not like a simple genre flip. It's way more complex, like a sonic tapestry.
Huh. So instead of the usual verse-chorus thing, we get these 8 separate AI-generated seeds that are somehow woven together. And the main goal, right from the get-go, is that it's not meant to be a cover, but a new inspired song.
Precisely. And that takes us right to the role of AI in all this. TATANKA is really clear. They see AI not as replacing human creativity, but more as a powerful tool for exploration. These 8 AI-generated seeds, those are the fundamental building blocks for this adaptation.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. When they talk about these seeds, do they give any hint about what kind of AI it was? Like, was it generating melodies, harmonies, maybe even lyrical ideas? Knowing what the AI actually did would shed a lot of light here.
That's a good question. The blog post doesn't really dive deep into the specific AI model they used, unfortunately. But it does stress that these seeds are original musical ideas from the AI, not just, tweaks on the existing Creep melody or structure.
So totally fresh stuff.
Exactly. The idea is that this opens up creative paths a human might not naturally go down. And the final 14-minute piece isn't like one idea developing over time. It's, as the blog says, an amalgamation of 8 modular compositions.
Right.
So think less traditional song structure, more like interconnected musical blocks or scenes. Each one has its own character from the AI, but then they've been carefully arranged by humans to make it flow.
That multi-layered thing isn't just in the music, though, is it? The blog post really makes a point about the multilingual side of it. It's fascinating they went so heavy on French. Considering the themes of alienation, do you think that could be deliberate? Maybe to create a sense of otherness or tap into a different cultural way of expressing those feelings compared to the original English?
That's a really sharp observation. The shift to mostly French lyrics with just those touches of English definitely adds another layer for interpretation.
Yeah.
And when you combine that with using multiple male and female voices, the adaptation kind of moves beyond just one person's viewpoint. It potentially boosts the universality of those core emotions in the original song, longing, feeling inadequate, maybe even a little hope. This layering of voices and languages could definitely add to that feeling of a fractured identity, or maybe like a collective voice expressing these feelings.
It's almost like the song's emotional DNA is being translated and re-expressed through a completely different system, different language, different voices. It really makes you think about how adaptable the core feeling of a song can be.
Exactly. By taking creep apart and then putting it back together with these very linguistic and vocal parts, TATANKA shows how durable that core message is, how it can connect across different cultures and languages.
So, yeah, this is definitely not just someone singing a French version at karaoke night.
Not even close.
This version, as the blog post really hammers home, it constructs an entirely new experience obliquely inspired by the original. It's about building something brand new from those basic creep elements.
And that's where the human artistry comes back in, crucially. The AI might generate these initial seeds, but choosing which ones to use, arranging them, shaping the whole piece, those are all human artistic choices.
Right, the human curation.
Exactly. This back and forth between AI and human creativity is key to understanding what TATANKA is doing. They emphasize that every part contributes to a piece that feels cohesive, but still has this unpredictable edge, which comes directly from those AI origins.
This blend of AI and human input, it raises some pretty big questions, doesn't it?
For sure.
The blog post actually explicitly asks listeners to rethink what constitutes authenticity and truth in music, art, and society, especially now with AI getting so involved in creating things.
It certainly does, and that's kind of where the blog post shifts gears, connecting this musical experiment to a much bigger social picture. It starts looking at how creep in this reimagined form might resonate in the specific context of America in 2025. They even mention Google's Deep Dive podcast and its look at AI, art, and the reinvention of identity.
Right, so it's not just about the music itself. TATANKA is using this reimagining almost like a lens to look at the present moment, or well, their prediction of what America in 2025 might feel like.
Yeah.
And the first thing they bring up in that context is this idea of intensified alienation and what they call a fragmented world.
The blog post suggests that the famous line, "I don't belong here," takes on even more weight in 2025. They point to the growing political, racial, and economic divides that, well, many societies are dealing with right now. They also mention increased social isolation and more dug-in ideological extremism as things that really amplify that feeling of being an outsider.
So within this framework, TATANKA's version isn't just about one person feeling out of place. It's expanded to become an anthem not only for individual alienation, but for an entire society struggling with belonging. That's a really powerful reframing.
It is. And the next theme they dig into is the desperation for connection and recognition. The blog post makes a direct link between the original song's longing and, the huge influence of social media in 2025, where everyone's hopes and insecurities are constantly amplified and on show.
Yeah, we're just swimming in these curated images of supposedly perfect lives online, right? And the blog suggests this constant exposure to unattainable standards from all these digital sources just makes people feel even more inadequate.
Right.
That basic desperate wish to be seen and valued just gets dialed up even higher in this kind of environment.
And that gap between the often perfect online self and the messy reality of life just keeps getting wider, which makes that desperation even worse. TATANKA's adaptation, seen this way, kind of taps into and amplifies this widespread anxiety of our digital culture.
Then the blog post takes a pretty dark turn. It focuses on the shadow of self-loathing and toxic subcultures in 2025. This links up with some really worrying social trends they talk about.
Yeah, it gets pretty heavy. Against the backdrop of potential mass unemployment due to AI, ongoing economic inequality, and the persistent problem of online radicalization.
Yeah.
The blog suggests that feelings of self-loathing can sadly turn into really destructive behaviors. They specifically call out the disturbing trend of extremist groups co-opting the lyric, "I wish I was special."
Wow. That's really disturbing. Do they speculate at all on why that specific line might resonate with those groups or what it says about how they see themselves?
That is a chilling thought, how a line about personal inadequacy gets twisted and used to fuel hate. The blog post really stresses that TATANKA's reimagining doesn't ignore these potentially dark undertones, but actually brings them right to the surface. And by doing that, the adaptation forces listeners to confront how unchecked alienation can lead to really harmful outcomes. It reframes creep not just as personal angst, but as reflecting a potentially deeply troubled emotional landscape in 2025.
So if you put all that together, creep, in the context of 2025, America, according to this blog post anyway, becomes this mirror reflecting some pretty uncomfortable societal truths, themes of resentment, isolation, and self-hate.
Exactly. The blog explicitly connects these core feelings to specific anxieties they see dominating 2025. Economic despair, The rise of things like the incel movement, the constant pressure of performing on social media, and even that pervasive feeling of being watched all the time in our tech-heady society.
It paints a pretty bleak picture, actually. The song capturing a collective national psychology of longing, inadequacy, and rage. That's a huge claim about the cultural impact TATANKA thinks this reimagining could have.
And they wrap up that part of the analysis by repeating the idea of creep as an anthem for the lost, the bitter, and the unheard. A soundtrack, basically, to what they see as America's potentially fractured soul in 2025.
So this adaptation is clearly meant to be way more than just a new musical take on an old song.
Oh, definitely.
The blog post makes it crystal clear that TATANKA sees it as a statement on the evolving nature of music, technology, and society itself.
It's that combination, the AI-generated ideas blended with human artistic choices, the deliberate shifts in language and structure, and grounding it all in the predicted reality of 2025 that gives this reinvention its weight.
Ultimately, the blog argues that this reimagining turns a classic song into something deeply relevant, something thought-provoking for listeners today. It challenges us not just in how we listen to music, but also how we see ourselves and the world around us.
In essence, like the blog's title hints, that feeling of being a creep, of not fitting in, it's a feeling that in different ways just keeps resonating and maybe takes on new shapes with all these societal and tech changes.
So thinking about the source you shared, you can really see how this isn't just about, a different arrangement of a song we all know. It really uses that familiar tune and those core emotions to say something pretty significant about where we are now, or at least where TATANKA sees us heading in 2025.
Indeed. It definitely pushes us to think about the power of reinterpretation, especially when you mix it with new tech like AI, to really shine a light on the complexities and anxieties of our time.
That's been a truly fascinating deep dive. It really does spark a lot of follow-up questions. Like, it makes you wonder, how might other classic songs be reinterpreted through this AI lens, looking at the specific issues we face right now? What new, maybe even unsettling meanings could pop up when familiar melodies get reshaped by AI and pointed at today's anxieties? It's definitely something to chew on.